Hey guys, welcome to the RAMZPAUL show. It is Friday night, my Friday night show, the last show of the week. I always love this show. It's sometimes a little different audience, and I hope you guys all had a great week. And hey, let's go, Brandon. Yeah, hey, how are you doing? It's good to see you, and it's great to see Civil Shepherd and Scott James and the usual bunch here. It's great to see you. Hope you had a great week. It was a pretty good week for me. It was busy. We did a lot of stuff this week, but on the whole, it was good. And I thought my stream with Z Man was probably our best stream so far. It just gets better and better. And I really do appreciate you guys making that possible. And if you're new, welcome. I do the Ramsey Paul show Monday through Friday. Monday through Thursday is my day show. I do it at 11 a.m. Central. I last about an hour. And then in the evening, I do it on Friday evenings at this time. And we go an hour or whatever, depending on how much response I get. What's a little different on this show is I'd like to do as a potential call in. So if you have a question or a comment, well, the preferred way, let me just bring this up, is if you Power Chat has a feature right here. I appreciate that. In fact, I already have a Power Chat, so I'll go over that. Stream Elements has a feature, a tip feature, and you'll see the link in the description for that. Rumble has rants. I appreciate those. And YouTube, of course, has super chats. So there's a couple of ways to interact with me. That is a great way to do so. Now, if you just want to call in, say hi, or have a question or comment, and all I ask is if you do, just call in and keep it brief. It's kind of like radio. Remember the old Rush Limbaugh? It's always like, caller, what's your question? Because this is the forum just for a quick question. I will answer it just because it makes it more interesting. Now, if you want to go in depth, I would highly suggest you join my Substack, because all my members of the Substack, we have a get together every Tuesday night, a roundtable. And this Tuesday was great. It lasted 3 hours. We had a great community. And you don't have to join the roundtable. You can just watch it, but it's one of the advantages of being a Substack supporter. Plus, every Friday, today, I put out a video just for my Substack followers. And it was about the tariffs. I'll talk a little bit about it tonight too, but that's kind of an added bonus. So if you haven't signed up for my Substack, and if you want to call in, I'm going to put the StreamYard thing in both the super chat or the YouTube part and the Rumble part. So feel free to call in if you have a question. Just keep it YouTube friendly is all I ask. So far, I've not had any issue, but otherwise I'll have to block you if you do that. I already got a power chat, and you have the link below here. This is from my friend Kim. He's in Finland. Hi, Rams. The older I get, the more I realize that I don't like people in general. I can relate to that. I can relate to that. Nothing against life or humanity. Still love chess, reading, fishing, and so the more I talk to people about this, the more people agree. Is it just about getting older? I think so. I've never really cared for humanity as a whole, but I really care about individuals. And it's sort of there's an old saying that conservatives, they can't stand humanity, but they love individual people. Whereas liberals, they love humanity, but they hate everyone in their lives. And there's some truth to that. So yeah, the mob or masses, I do not like. I think most people are pretty stupid and they just are sheep. But that's just the way it is. And a lot of people I don't have much in common with, and I don't find them interesting. I find them very boring. And so I definitely, I think when you live longer, you start to see things over and over and you just get tired of it all. So I do agree, Kim, that is the situation. Now you're in Finland, and Finns are known for being reticent type people. They tend to be more shy than other groups of people. So that may play into it too. I'm down here in the South. People tend to be more friendly than neighbors with each other. Like when I drive down my highway, people wave. But it's different when you get into a bigger city. So I think it depends on your environment too. All right. All right. Well, we'll just get into it. So thank you, Kim, for that. I really do appreciate your support. Of course, the big news, the tariffs that Trump placed on really most of the world, and what economic impact that has and will have. This is, I think, a a defining moment, and it's not just Trump. This moment was coming anyway because the world was changing. We've been under the path of globalization for quite a while now. I think it really accelerated after communism fell, because until about 1990, the world was divided up what we called the free countries and the communist countries. Now, a lot of the so called free countries are no longer really free. Like in Britain, if like some immigrants should stab to death your children, and if you should complain about it, you go to jail. So they're not a free country. Neither is France. You know, France, they just got rid of Le Pen because they don't like her. So Western Europe is no longer free, but originally that's how it was. And then when communism fell, it was this idea that, oh, we're just going to have one big world. It's going to be globalization. We're not really going to have borders per se. We're going to allow the flow of goods. And I think one of the big events was in, was it the 90s with NAFTA under Bill Clinton? And people like Pat Buchanan argued against NAFTA, or Ross Perot, saying it would be a giant sucking sound of jobs out of the United States. Whereas the other side, a lot of the neoliberals, I guess, or even like libertarian types, thought, oh no, it's going to make everything cheaper, make everything better, real big free trade. And they had this idea that tariffs are what caused the Great Depression in the 1929, and I don't buy that. I think that was that was fake news, but they really believe that. So NAFTA was passed, and then a lot of other trade agreements were passed, and we started to this whole so-called free trade. I say so-called because a lot of countries really didn't have free trade. They had tariffs themselves, but we as the United States, we pretty much let everything in, which was good in some ways because we got a lot of cheap stuff from China. So instead of, let's say, tennis shoes, instead of making them here in the United States, where you have to pay, I don't know, say $20 an hour for the worker, then you have to have health benefits and you have to have environmental protections. Well, Nike, they could close the factories in America and just offshore it to like Vietnam, where they're basically slave labor, 20 cents an hour, no health protections. They don't give a shit about the environment. I'm not just picking on Nike, Apple Computer did this too. I mean, most of them did this. So we got a lot of cheap goods within the United States coming in. But the problem is we really decimated our middle class, especially working class people. And it started with more like steel production, even the auto industry, or if you make washing machines or televisions, all those people, mostly blue collar workers, were out of a job. And now recently that has gone up the chain, and now white collar workers have been starting to be replaced. You know, you send the jobs, programming jobs to India and even engineering stuff because it's cheaper labor. And it's, you know, it has a huge impact. If a guy loses a job, uh, statistically, the most likely reason for a man to get divorced is not that he cheats on his wife or beats his wife. I mean, you can do all of that. Your wife's not probably going to divorce you. But if you lose your job, she will probably divorce you. That is the number one cause of divorce. Man loses his job, the woman is out. So you just have to understand that. So when a man loses his job, let's say a middle-aged man is making a good salary, and all of a sudden his job gets sent to India, or he's working in the factory, gets sent to Vietnam. Yeah, it's devastating. He doesn't have much money. He has unemployment. And then there's no more of these good jobs for him to get. I mean, I guess he could be an Uber driver or something, but it makes a lot less, doesn't have insurance, can't provide for his family as much. And all of a sudden, the woman, the wife, is like, oh, I'm no longer happy anymore. He doesn't care about my needs. And then she splits, and it's devastating. It really is devastating for families, job losses. And so that was overlooked in the whole free trade discussion. And this whole thing really goes back even longer because before World War II, we had a lot of protectionism. We did in the United States. In fact, before the 20th century, there wasn't an income tax. The government was funded by tariffs. Tariffs have always been part of the United States. And that continued up until World War II. And then after World War II, the world really changed in many ways. You know, you had communism then, but then you also had for the first time only one superpower that was of the so-called free nations. You had the Soviet Union, but in the free nations, capitalist nations, it was just America, right? So America was a superpower economically, politically, militarily, and the at that point the Europe was devastated because of the war. Obviously, Germany was being reconstructed, and Japan was in tatters. So was China. So America was a big dog, and we went away from the reserve currency from being the British, the pound sterling. After World War II, it became, I think, after Bretton Woods, the dollar. And it kind of made sense. And that was good for America. At the end of 1945, I think America had over 50% of all manufacturing. So everything was made in America: cars, televisions, radios, you name it. It was made in America. We were the industrial powerhouse because there was nothing else. China was communist, so was the Soviet Union. Again, Germany was in tatters. I mean, Germany was prosperous under Nazism, but it was destroyed now. Britain was losing their colonies and falling apart, and France was recovering, and they were having a lot of socialism. So, the United States, we were the big dog. We were the big dog. And because of that, we had like the reserve currency in the United States. And that worked pretty well from about 1945 until about 1971, 72, when we started to have other issues with oil, especially OPEC, and they had the oil. And there was a crisis with our currency, I believe under Nixon, and we went off the gold standard because the dollar used to be tied to gold. And instead, we decided to basically tie it to the petrodollar, oil. So for Saudi Arabia, we did an agreement, you know, hey, we'll protect you, provide military protection, all that stuff, because Saudi Arabia is just it's a Saudi family. That's where they get the name. They're really not that many of them, but they're on all this oil. And so it's like, well, we'll protect you from all your enemies. In exchange, you got to sell oil to us. But more than that, on your OPEC, you got to keep them under control. And any oil that you sell needs to be in dollars, not in any other currency. And because of that, then there's always a demand for dollars because other countries, you need oil. But to get oil, you had to convert to dollars. And so there's always a demand for dollars. Plus, the United States was still a very powerful nation, the most powerful in the world, the free world. And it made sense. So because of that, that really opened up the things that we were able to do that most countries aren't able to do. Mainly, we started to run a budget deficit. Usually most countries say if you're Argentina, you can't do that because you end up with hyperinflation because you can't make your budget. So you just got to print money, and excess money leads to inflation. But with the United States, everyone wanted the dollar. So in a sense, we exported our inflation. And so that worked from about the 70s, really until this moment. And now what happened since then is starting in the 70s, some of the other economies started to improve. You had Japan, they started to make cars. I remember when I was a kid, made in Japan was like a joke and meant it was junk. But they got a lot better in their manufacturing. They recovered from the war in the 70s. So it'd been like 20, 30 years and they were ready to recover. And then Europe was starting to build back. Germany, West Germany, at the time, Germany was split, but West Germany was recovering. They have industrious people. And to a degree, Britain was and other nations were. And so there was a lot more competition there. And it wasn't really significant in the 70s, but you could start to see that was happening. And then you got into the 80s, and then China had their change in the 80s where the Communist Party still runs China, but they're not economically communist anymore. They're more capitalist. And that started the big boom of China. And then because of free trade that happened really in the 90s, corporations determined, hey, we could outsource a lot of our production to, say, China or other countries, or China. They can make things really cheap because, again, the labor's so low and they can bring it into the United States. And consumers liked it because you got cheap stuff, but again, lost jobs. And everyone thought, well, it's no big deal. We'll keep all the dirty jobs over in China. We'll be like on the high end. We're just the designers and stuff, the engineers and so forth. But we're seeing that move now too. So we finally got to a point of a crisis in the United States of a couple things I wrote about today. Our budget deficit is out of control. We always knew it was going to be an issue eventually, but the day of reckoning is happening where we have to spend more now in interest on our debt than we spend in all the national defense. And that's not really sustainable. Then we have the issue, a demographic crisis, where for whatever reasons, you can discuss the reasons, but white people aren't having many children anymore. Maybe they have, years ago, they would have like 4 or 5 kids. Think the Brady Bunch, right? Or it wasn't unusual for a family to have 4 kids. Then it started to get down more of, well, no, you just have 2 kids. And now you have women working, and maybe, when they get desperate, when they hit their biological clock, they put out 1 kid. And it's probably when she's older, so the poor kid's got autism. So this is what we're seeing now. So we're seeing a decline in white births, and this was always a white nation. And then you have the baby boomer generation, which was huge because I was after World War II. People were optimistic in the late 40s, early 50s, and they started to have a lot of babies. And that generation now, which really sustained America through, let's say, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, especially the 70s and 80s. In 60s, they were like teenagers, the baby boomers, but then they're in the workforce in the 70s and 80s. They kind of hit their peak, with Wall Street, all those movies. And then they lasted through the 90s. But now we're getting to the point that the boomers are starting to die off or retire. And this is creating a problem because we don't have the people to replace them. And the people that we are trying to replace them with are lower IQ immigrants that we're bringing in that really don't have a connection to America. Our founding fathers like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, there's not that connection. They don't give a shit about that. In fact, they usually have a lot of racial resentments against white people and hatreds. And we're relying on them to keep things afloat. So we're losing the expertise, the IQ, and you're just starting to see things starting to break apart. Now, I guess something to help mitigate that is we're getting a lot of better technology like AI. Maybe that can help. So maybe you don't have very smart people anymore to fly planes, but maybe it's not a big to-do because AI can fly it anyway for them. But eventually you need smart people and capable people, and those people in general are leaving the workplace and they're being replaced by people in their own homelands. They can't maintain a civilization because we believe, well, people are interchangeable. So we got a big crisis in our hands financially, just fundamentally. And then also with this whole globalization with trade, then the thing came up, well, if if you can trade like capital across borders and goods, why not people, right? So instead of outsourcing jobs to Indians, why don't we just have Indians come here? We see that with H-1Bs, but like in Canada, they've been flooded with Indians, and Britain flooded with Muslims or Pakistanis or whatever. And it's fundamentally changing those nations, because those nations used to be hundreds of years white Christian nations. Now you have an alien people that don't have those values, and just because they happen to set foot on our dirt, there's no magic dirt that turns them into like our people. That was the myth, that everyone's interchangeable. People aren't interchangeable. There's differences. There's differences racially that are genetic, not based on social things, genetic, and same with ethnicities. And that creates problems. And we're seeing these problems now. But because of that, when we started to trade so-called freely, we started to see the mass migration of people. And it wasn't just in the United States. We've seen in New Zealand, Australia, Europe is facing this crisis. There's a few countries that have resisted it, like Russia and some of the Eastern, what used to be the Eastern Bloc countries, like Hungary has resisted it pretty well, and Poland's not too bad now. But other countries, like in England, the capital of England is London, but the majority of people there aren't native English anymore. It'd be like if you went to Tokyo and you didn't see Japanese people. Now, that's a problem. And this is what we're seeing now. And they were said, oh, well, no, but this helps. Free trade helps prosper society. And we get all these people in, the best and brightest. It will make us more prosperous. But it hasn't happened. It's actually create more poverty. And you see that in the Britain, where everything's really dreary now. Their standard of living is falling. You see that with Canada. They've imported all these Indians and other third world immigrants. It hasn't improved that country, even economically. Forget about the social aspect, higher crime, there's lack of social cohesion. Forget about all that. Just based on the GNP, it's not helping, it's actually hurting, which isn't surprising. You know, you transfer people to a new country, and if they're doing a bad job in their country, they're not magically going to be industrious in your country. But that was the idea of all this openness, free trade, and let's break down barriers so you don't even have countries anymore, basically. They'll just be like geographic units. So it's kind of the one world concept, really, that was coming in. Klaus Schwab and all those people, the World Economic Forum, this is their dream they had, kind of a one world government where they kind of run things. And Europe, they tried to start this with like the EU, right? The EU was first a thing. Well, logically, why should Germany be different than Belgium versus France? Let's just blur the lines, allow everyone move freely. And within the Schengen region, you can. If you get, let's say, within Hungary, I was able to go to Germany. No one checked my passport. And that was their idea, is free movement of people and breaking down borders, and you don't have nationalities anymore protecting your people. It's like the EU bureaucrats in Brussels. That was the idea. And that's what they really believed in. Macron, Starmer, and that Ursula, that girl boss, right? So you have all these mediocre or poor people trying to run everything. But this was their vision, and a vision of globalism. But now Trump has understood, well, wait a minute, this isn't good. It's destroying our people. It's destroying Europe. J.D. Vance has brought it up. He said, J.D. Vance, and he's right, the threat to Europe is not the Russians. The Russians, don't worry, if you're French, you don't have to worry that the Russians are going to conquer France. That's not going to happen. They're not going to invade Germany. They like to say that to make everyone hysterical so they can scare people, like they scared people in COVID unnecessarily. Because scared people you can control easier, right? That's why they are doing that. But Russia's not going to do that. The real threat to these countries is they're replacing their people with third world, like Africans and Pakistanis and Indians, that do not have the same genetic basis of the people that were originally from England. The reason England used to look like England was because of the English people. It wasn't anything else. You just can't replace English people, say like Haitians, and act like you're still going to have England. Oh, you may still have the same name, but it's going to look like Haiti. If you bring a bunch of Africans into London, London will look like Africa. That's how things work. People, oh, that's racist. Well, it's not. It's true. I mean, I don't care what words you have on it. We've seen this everywhere without exception. This is how it works. So J.D. Vance and others have said the real threat to you, Europe, is this globalism. You're destroying your own countries that you've had for hundreds, even thousands of years. Your people, your prosperity, your sense of whatever liberty you have. Not like our liberty in the United States, but you still have some. That's all going away because the people you're importing in, they don't share those values. They don't share the openness of like the Renaissance. Islam doesn't share that. So this is why we're getting all these conflicts, because Europeans thought kind of like us, like, oh, the Democrats and even the Republicans, we really believe that blacks are the same as whites, and inside every black person is a white person. They just need proper training. So if we just get them proper education or whatever, they will become like white people. And then it's really a patronizing view of things, but that's how they looked at it. But it doesn't happen that way. They don't become white people. They stay who they are for the most part. There's exceptions, but in general, they revert to the mean. And Europe is finding this out now with their immigrants. So as J.D. Vance said, that's the real threat to Europe. So the real threat to the UK is not the Russians, is importing all these immigrants. Same with Ireland. It's a tragedy what's happening there. And globalism made this possible. And part of this was because of their trade policies. And Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, they understand this. They understand that there needs to be a fundamental change. Number one, we just can't keep going on with the current system because we have these huge deficits. It's just not going to work. So we got to get back into protecting countries. And the first way to protect that economically, there's a couple of ways. One, you protect your borders, which Trump is trying to do. I mean, he's fighting all these corrupt judges, 600 corrupt judges, but he's trying to protect the borders. And then number two, protect our borders from people. So stop this people willy-nilly coming into the country. But number two is protecting our capital. So we have our jobs in America and we create industry in America. Because if you outsource all your industry, eventually you will be defeated because you won't be able to have a strong army or a strong navy your competitor will have. So it's a national security problem too. So tariffs had to happen. They just had to happen, and it's not going to go away. The world has changed now. It's no longer a unipolar world where it's just the United States. Now China's a big dog. Russia's becoming more powerful, and even Iran. And Europe needs to get their act together. Otherwise, they're going to be left in the dust. Individual European nations will. So what Trump is doing is a fundamental shift, like Nixon going off the gold standard and getting on the petrodollar. And I would put it up there with Bretton Woods, after World War II. It's a fundamental shift in our economy. This is the major event in my lifetime, even I think more so than Nixon going off the gold standard, which happened when I was like, 10 years old. So this is a big shift that's happening. And some of the forces are beyond Trump. There's just, even if we got rid of all the tariffs, there's just no way this can continue with our huge deficits. And no longer will the dollar be the world's reserve currency. There's going to be a basket of currencies. Some may be digital. Because an interesting thing happened today. Let me just show you if I have that here. But one of the things that happened, and I'll go through these stories, is this was an odd day because yesterday the stocks went way down and today the stocks were way down. But Bitcoin was up today. So there's a split there. Bitcoin went up in value, but the stocks went down. And I think we're going to see more of this as the dollar starts to lose this reserve currency. This is going to have huge, huge implications of the world. And this was the dollar losing its reserve currency was in works before Trump. It was accelerated by the stupid war with Ukraine that we got in, because it's not really a war of Ukraine against Russia. It was a war of the United States, we were using Ukrainians as our pawns, but it was really the United States against Russia, which we lost, by the way. But we put all these sanctions on Russia, and Russia then got really involved with the BRICS. It had already been around beforehand, but now you have a whole economic system outside of the United States. And this was a big inflection point. During the war, they really thought, Biden didn't really think this because Biden couldn't think. He was senile. But the people around him thought, well, we're the big dogs. If we put sanctions on people, hard sanctions, they're screwed. And the idea was, okay, Russia, we're going to kick you off SWIFT. We're going to hit you with all these sanctions, and it's going to create poverty in Russia. The Russian people and the oligarchs are going to rebel. They're going to kick out Putin, and Russia will break up. Then we could send BlackRock in there. We could send the neocons in there. We can have our gay pride parades in Moscow. We could teach the little boys in Moscow they're actually trapped in the wrong bodies and they need sex changes. This was their idea. So they put on all these heavy sanctions, and it didn't work. Russia's more prosperous now than ever. They really are. In fact, it didn't hurt Russia at all. They just invested in their economy. They built stuff now in Russia. They have a lot of food, energy, and not everyone listened to us. India didn't listen to us. China didn't listen to us. They continue to trade with Russia. Brazil does. All these BRICS countries do. So half the world still trades with Russia. So all these sanctions we put on turn out to be meaningless. And this shocked the people because they thought, oh, we're the big guys. If we put sanctions on someone, that's going to destroy them. It didn't anymore. And that was a fundamental change that Russia could say, okay, we'll go off the dollar. We'll work in other currencies in. And now other countries were like, yeah, maybe we will do that too. The Chinese are looking that way. So that was not really a wise thing to do, but it was already happening anyway. These countries were becoming more independent. They don't need to depend on the dollar, which is bad news for the United States. The only reason we were able to spend more than we take in is because everyone wanted dollars. So this is going to be really bad news. Either we got to balance our budget or we're going to have hyperinflation. So there's a lot of problems here that happened even before Trump came in. And even if you got rid of all the tariffs, which I don't think you can now at this point, it wouldn't matter. It really wouldn't matter. Yeah, it may pump up the stock market a little bit, but the stock market is not exactly the economy. And eventually all will come crashing down. I think things were in a lot more serious problem when Trump got in than people realize. The whole fundamental structure of our economy, and I'm not just talking Biden, he was an idiot. He didn't know what was going on, but it's not all to be blamed on Biden. This has been developing ever since Nixon, to tell the truth. That's when it started, and we've been able to kick the can down the road for a long time because that's what politicians like to do, but that is quickly coming to an end. And I think we're coming to the end right now in that type of thing. So this is where we are right now economically with the tariffs. I support the tariffs, and I don't care if it hurts the stock market. I don't really care. The stock market could go to zero. I don't give a shit. We need to restructure our country because the country is more important than the stock market. A couple of things. We'll go through some of these links here. And thank you for being here, guys. And if you have any questions or comments, please, there's Power Chats, there's Super Chats, and there's rants on Rumble. So let's go through a couple of things here. Couple of good news is the economy is starting to roar with a strong 228,000 jobs added in the month of March, well ahead of the market's expectation. And there's an increase in transportation, construction, and warehouse employment. And America's push to onshore jobs here in the United States is working, and it will. It definitely will. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. If it becomes too expensive, the only reason companies went offshore in the first place was because they get cheaper labor. But if with tariffs you don't get the cheaper labor anymore, there's no sense to have it overseas you'd rather have it in the United States. And it's also better, like call centers. Wouldn't you rather have a call center, all things being equal, in the United States, where when you call in, you get an American you can understand, than some Indian in Mumbai that you can't understand their accent? I mean, we've all had those experiences. And so I think that is definitely the case. So that's it. I got a rant from Aqua 1917. Great analysis. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And as I was going to say, thank you, um, Aqua, for reminding me this. Is I do think the EU is going to be doomed now too, because the EU was part of the globalism, and I think, and this is going to be a good thing for Europe. More and more of the European countries are going to take their own interest into consideration, and then that will stop the influx of all these migrants too. So I see a huge restructuring happening here, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think having our jobs coming back here, where people, and we have other issues too, though, like with AI and other issues. So there's a lot of complexities here, a lot of moving parts, right? That's why it's hard to compare times. Everyone wants to compare now to, the 20s, right before the Great Depression. Things are a lot different, right? Back in the 20s, we were a 90-some% white nation, Christian nation, all spoke English. We didn't have the technology, totally different environment. So you got to be careful when you do comparisons. There's some value in it, but there's things that are different too. It's the expression, history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it does rhyme, meaning it's not exactly the same, but there's some things you can look back on. Even going back to the Greeks and Romans, you can see patterns, but there's always differences. And we got a lot of wild cards now with the AI and other things that are coming in. But yeah, I think what we're seeing is the ending of the whole globalist dream of like a one world government or one Europe. That's going to be breaking apart now. And again, you have multiple things happening at once, just not tariffs, but you have the war that Russia's winning. Russia wasn't impacted by the sanctions. China's a very strong nation on their own. Iran's getting stronger. Europe is imploding. I think people are getting upset in Europe. The AfD party in Germany is very popular. Le Pen was going to win until they arrested her. So a lot of nationalism is getting much more popular even in Europe. I know they keep arresting us, but they can only do so much, and eventually we get through. Sort of like what happened in the United States. The stuff I said that was considered so controversial, right? The stuff I said, like, RAMZPAUL, I don't want to be associated with him. He's too edgy. Now you have like Matt Walsh saying stuff I do. You have Tucker Carlson saying stuff like I do. I see people, this is crazy. I mean, I'm like almost look like a liberal compared to some of these people now. And I was always the extremist. I'm so happy though. I'm so happy because that means our ideas have really won. And the usual groups, they try to silence us, they try to arrest us, they try to harass us, intimidate us. It's not working. You just really can't stop truth. And I think that is the key thing. So I am very happy with seeing the developments here. Ryan, reminder that gold, silver is also a good investment. It's always going up. Well, it historically hasn't always gone up, but it is now. In the 80s, I heard a lot of the gold bugs say that because of the the deficit then was even the issue. But ironically, I bought into it and I bought some gold coins at the time for like $500 a coin. I'm glad I did because now it's worth a lot more. But at the time, you would have made more money investing in stocks. But I think those days are starting to change now. And I don't know what stocks are going to do. You may see more into now gold. You're right. I think Ryan, and again, disclaimer for legal reasons. I'm not giving investment advice. But I don't know. We could see the end of the big, the stock market always going up. I think that could be coming to the end fundamentally. Of course, you don't want to overreact. That you have always in the stock market days where it goes up and down. I think after COVID, right? There's a big drop, then it went back up. I remember back in the 80s, it went down in 87. The big crash. This is it. This is a new Great Depression. Then a week later, it's all back up. So it's important to keep all this stuff in perspective. But yeah, I do think, and no investment advice, but I do think investing in land is always a good thing as the population grows. And I mean, it's worked out well. Like for Sasha's dad, years ago, he invested, bought a lot of land, and people made fun of him. Why you buy all this land in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Hicksville, right? Why are you doing that? For like $100 an acre. It's worth a lot more than $100 an acre by a factor of 100. So I think a lot of this can be wise. And gold and silver. I don't know about stocks, and I'm pretty bullish on crypto because I think as we go to different currencies, crypto could become, maybe that Bitcoin would be the world's reserve currency because it's not just controlled by the United States. I don't know, but I could see this happening. So Brian, I agree with you. I think gold and silver could be a good investment, but again, I don't make any guarantees, so don't lose all your money on gold. So yeah, that's happening. All right. A couple of these things I've said here. And this is a chart kind of puts this in perspective. I said, I want my country back. The stock market could go to zero and I wouldn't care. And so here's the stock market. This is just in perspective, right? This is over the past like 5 years, the trend of the stock market. It really went down big time during the whole COVID hoax. And then it really recovered pretty high. But this is the down now. Right now, this little bit right here is what everyone's panicking about. And look at this all here. So even the stock market, if you put it in perspective, it's really not down that much compared it to the trend. So I wouldn't care if it went down further. I think it'd be kind of funny, but I don't think it. I don't think it will. I think there's one thing I have learned in investing, and everyone knows this, but it's hard to control it. A lot of investing is based on greed and fear. Greed and fear. And what happens, because everyone knows, right? You all know that you should buy when the price is low and then sell when it's high. Everyone knows that. But the problem is, how do you know when it's high and how do you know when it's low? Because when it's going down, 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 people start to panic. I don't want to be in it. I don't want to be in the stock. Sell, sell, sell. And you could be right, but there's eventually in a bottom. And these sort of things, these sort of panics there's always overselling, meaning if you're able to catch the bottom and buy, you're going to make off pretty well because it will rebound to some degree, and then you can make a lot of money. On the other side, you have the issue too when something keeps going up, 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 and some people hang on to it, hang on to it, and hang on to it because they get greedy. They think it's always going to go up. Well, you got to see eventually it won't always go up. So you got to be able to time it that, all right, I've made enough, I'm going to sell. And, we don't have crystal balls, so you don't know. But personally, I timed this fairly well. I got out of stocks a couple of months ago. So I kind of timed it well because I thought something like this could happen. But, maybe it's time to get back in. I know Sasha was talking about it. And I was like, well, what money you have, Sasha, maybe now's the time to get in. But I don't know. I'm not trying to tell you guys what to do. But I don't think the stock market will go down forever. I do think there's going to be a rebound. It'll rebound pretty hard. You'll see one day it goes up 1,000 again, maybe as soon as Monday too. So, but I do think there's been a fundamental shift, and I think that is important to understand here. So I don't think there's a couple things. Short term, I think the market will still go up and down, but I think long term, we're restructuring the entire world's economy. And it's not all going to be bad because, again, we're going to have a lot more manufacturing in this country. And who knows? Because other countries, they still want to sell their products in the United States, even if they have to pay a tariff. It's worth it for them. And that tariff, that's money, right? That's money that goes to our treasury. And as Donald Trump said, hey, if we're getting enough money from these other countries, why do you guys have to pay an income tax, huh? Why do you need to pay the income tax? All right. A little bit about this. Let's see here. some more clips here we'll take a look at.
Top 10% of America.
Oh, sorry about that. My headphones weren't plugged in, so you got an echo. So here we go.
The distribution of equities across households. The top 10% of Americans own 88% of equities.
I tweeted this. So the top 10% of Americans own 88% of the stock market is owned by the rich. So, spare me. Everyone like, oh, the stock market is going down. It's mostly a bunch of rich people this is affecting. The average, and were the rich people, were they really sad when the coal miners lost their job? They're like, no, learn how to code Java. Or when all these industries you got outsourced, well, that's just capitalism. Deal with it, right? That was their attitude. Now their stocks are going to down. Oh no, Ove! Oh, it's another Holocaust. And spare me if I don't cry too much for you.
88% of the stock market. The next 40% owns 12% of the stock market. The bottom 50 has debt. They have credit card bills. They rent their homes. They have auto loans.
Yeah, 50% of people have no stock in this country whatsoever.
And we've got to give them some relief.
So this is really, it's also sort of it's interesting how the left now is so worried about the top 10% making all their money in the stocks, because again, it's like the top 10% have 88% of the stocks. And then if you do the next 40%, that's the next 12%, probably in 401ks and like upper middle class or middle class people. But then you have the working class, and a lot of people, they don't have shit. They don't have stocks. They don't have mutual funds. They don't have a 401k. They're lucky if they get it. A lot of the I saw some crazy figure, like almost like half of Americans, they couldn't come up with $1,000. It just amazes me how you could be in that position. But there are people like that. There's a lot of people like that, but no one gives a shit about them, right? And why are they in that position? Because there's no good jobs in this country because they've been outsourced. Now it's made a lot of these people on the top very rich. Shipping these jobs to India and to China has made these people, the rich people, even richer. This is why we've had an income disparity. Since we've had so-called free trade, has everyone got richer? No. In fact, most of the countries got poorer, but the top rich, they've got super rich, rich you can't even imagine. We have this huge disparity, and part of this is because of the so-called free trade. So these tariffs are going to kind of change that scenario again, where more of the middle people are going to get wealthier because they'll have better jobs. Yeah, but a lot of the super rich, oh no, I no longer have $3 billion. I only have $2 billion. Yeah, I feel bad for you.
That I was struck by the statistic from last year.
That's the message right there. Just as a bystander, I'm like, wow, okay.
All right. Or that I like.
And good for Tucker and this guy, because these guys, I'm sure, are both rich, but they see the need to help other people. I do too. I think we should help our fellow Americans and average blue-collar people. We should do this.
The examples, and I was really struck by two different statistics last year. Summer of 2024, Americans took more European vacations than they had in history. Summer of 2024, more Americans were using food banks than they ever have in history.
Yeah. And this is interesting how the right is dealing with this issue and the left is complaining about the left protesting Trump here on the tariffs. They're basically trying to protect the very rich. That's all it is. So it is really weird situation we got. So we had a situation in America now. We outsource all our jobs. Again, it starts with the blue collar workers, and now it's even the white collar workers. But they're super rich, the people that don't really have to sell their labor. This is where you just you have capital. You don't sell your labor, you have investments, right? Really rich people, they don't work, right? They don't work like us. They don't even work in a cubicle. They have investments. That's how they make all their money. They don't have to do shit. They just invest. That's what they call work. They're doing great. And they're buying all these new cars and yachts and private planes and taking all these trips to Europe. But then the average people, more and more, are having to go to food banks. This is a problem.
I went into 2 food banks near my hometown to ask, what's the story? And they said, it really takes, for a lot of people, it's a loss of dignity to walk in a food bank.
Of course.
But they were seeing a new phenomenon, that it wasn't their traditional clientele. It wasn't people who'd lost their homes. It wasn't people out on the street. These were working families who could no longer, $100 at the grocery store, that basket of groceries every week, they were missing 5, 6, 7 things, and they were coming to the food bank to top up. So that's not a great America. Record European vacation, record food banks.
That is an excellent message he made there. And this isn't just America. I believe Canada is seeing the same thing. As I know I have a Canadian audience, but yeah, if you're real rich in Canada, you're probably doing good with this globalization. You get on all these Indians to work cheaper than native Canadians. But and you can wall yourself off from diversity, and you can take your little vacations to Florida and everything's wonderful. But for average Canadians, they're really struggling. Britain, Sargon did a video about how bad Britain is really now, and most people are struggling. So so-called free trade in opening the borders has not enriched most people. It has impoverished most people. Now, the top people is very much enriched. So I don't really give a shit about the stock market at all. I don't care. I care about normal people having decent jobs and whatever, and I get it. People put in 401ks and all that. But again, most people don't have that. And, work at Panda Express. Yeah, that's not a way to get a wife and have children. And it's creating a lot of problems with our birth rates and everything else. So tariffs are working to definitely fix that problem. And if rich people are going to cry about their stock portfolio, I don't really give a shit. Those same rich people never cried when coal miners lost their job. They never cried when programmers lost their jobs to Indians. They didn't cry. In fact, they liked it because they made more on their stocks because the company showed better earnings. So they liked it. They got a big stock dividend. Hey, I got a 50,000 stock dividend. Take the family to Europe. How about that? And you can go to the food bank. It's not a good recipe for a healthy nation, but that's what was happening. So now those people, am I supposed to cry about them that maybe they can't take their vacation to Europe now? I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about them because they didn't give a shit about normal Americans. So why we should give a shit about them crying now? So, F you in your little portfolio. I don't really care. All right, here we go. Here's some more on this.
Someone explain to me. We protect and defend South Korea. And in exchange, they steal our automobile industry. They steal our electronics industry. We protect and defend Japan. And in exchange, they close their market to our cars. We protect and defend Canada, and they run up a massive trade deficit with us. We protect and defend all of Europe at a cost of trillions of dollars over time. And what do? They run an over $300 billion trade deficit.
I just love Steve Miller. He just has to be honorary one of our people. I make him one of our people here.
With the United States. Why should America protect the world, send foreign aid to the world, defend the world, provide for the world, and in exchange, get ripped off by every other country in the world? And what do we have to show for it? The deindustrialization of the heartland, the destruction of the American dream, the eradication of our industrial and manufacturing base that we need for our national security, and the crushing of the American dream. It has to stop, not to mention $36 trillion in debt.
Yeah, it does have to stop. And everything he said there was right. And I think Trump is committed to this, and it needs to happen. And again, part of this, to be fair, it was an American's interest after World War II and even in the 70s to do this. It allowed us to run deficits. And that wasn't the proper way to do things. But it was the expression, kick the can down the road. So screw those people that did that, because they were passing the pain on to us. A lot of them are dead. Thank you. Thank you. Kicking the can down the road. Thank you for your help to your kids and grandkids. But that's what they did. So we're having to clean up their mess, is what's happening now. And Rich Mountain, $20 super sticker. Thank you, Rich Mountain. I really do appreciate that. All right, let's take a look at some more interviews. Let's see here. No, we're not going to watch all this. Ari Shaw did the clip of that, the highlights, but it was a good explaining how this really hurts normal Americans by not having a tariff. All right, some more good news, and this is you're going to expect this will happen because I was in the business world for over 30 years, and you just do where the money is and the costs are. GM moves to increase production of light-duty trucks, and this is in their Fort Wayne plant. That's in Indiana, and that means Indiana workers, American workers. So that's good news. We're going to see more and more of that because companies, they're going to adjust to reality and say, well, if we're going to get a big tariff, we're going to invest in America. Not just American companies either, like Toyota, for example, a car company. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but they have plants in the United States. So they don't have to pay the tariff. Subaru, I like Subarus. I've had some. They have plants in the United States. So we're going to see more and more of this happening. And I think this is going to be a good thing. Here was that graph I was trying to find. And this was a key one. I found this interesting. This was kind of usually Bitcoin or crypto's always trended with the stocks. But now Dow Jones was down quite a bit. So was NASDAQ. And Bitcoin, though, look at it. Bitcoin was up today. So Bitcoin broke away from the stock market. And this is interesting, this decoupling from the stock market. I think we're going to see more and more of that. All right. I think the other thing I wanted to go over today is kind of a sad story, but it is something that we're going to have to discuss because it's, well, let's take a look. It's this murder of this white football player by a black classmate. And here we go.
There was this kid, before I knew his name now, this kid was sitting under our tent at track. We asked him to move. He started getting aggressive and talking reckless. And my brother stepped in and said, "You need to move." And he's like, "Make me move." Austin grabbed his backpack. This kid, I tried to whip around as fast as I could, but I didn't see the stab. But then I look at my brother, and then I'm not going to talk about the rest. So just that's just what I saw. And I try to help him, but
it was just senseless.
It was really senseless. Really, I don't know why a person would do that to someone just over that little argument.
Because low IQ and their different culture, they don't really care. So basically, what happened is a black guy. The white guy said, "Hey, move, you're in our tent." And the black guy, "Yeah, shit, motherfucker," whatever. And the guy goes, "Hey, well, move your backpack for you then." And then the black thought, well, it's okay just to stab this guy to death. So that's what he did.
I mean, it's just crazy in this world nowadays.
It's not crazy. That's their culture. They do it all the time. It's crazy for our people to act that way, but it's normal. It's not unusual anyway for that culture to act that way.
Is how people just up and do that.
Well, people don't do that. There's just a certain demographic that does this. This doesn't happen in Japan. It doesn't happen much in China. It doesn't happen very much in white communities. And I'm not saying never, but this is extremely unusual for most civilized people to act that way. It's not unusual for this demographic, though. Not unusual at all. It's common. This is why you have such a high murder rate in Detroit, in East St. Louis, East St. Louis itself, North Flint. Flint, Michigan High, North Tulsa. I used to live in the Tulsa area. All the murders happen in North Tulsa. Can you guess why? I think we all know why. And this isn't because of bad economic opportunities or racism. There's a genetic basis to this.
That man has a family. That man has people that care about them all the time. And he did everything for our family too. He was a strong man. He was a strong kid.
Very, very sad. But sadly, this is the situation. And it's something that we shouldn't just gloss over anymore. It is it's really sad. It's heartbreaking, but it's a very common tale. And this is how, by the way, Jared Taylor originally got a hold of me years ago. It's because I did a video back in like 2009 or 2010 in Tulsa. A couple of white kids were jogging, and it was in South Tulsa. It wasn't a bad area. I've been to the park, and a couple of blacks robbed these two young kids. They were in college, a boy and a girl. And then after they robbed them, they shot them execution style in the head just for the hell of it. And there was no riots. White people didn't riot. The SPLC didn't come out there and talk about it. Did you guys hear about it on the national news? Did you? No. Wasn't covered in the national news. Did you guys international? Did you hear about it? Did you hear the president crying about it? Nope. Not a word about it. Not a word about it. Made the local news a little bit, but that was it. Did they emphasize the race? Nope. Now, what if it had been different? I mean, we got to do these what ifs because these are important. Let's say there's a black kid and his black girlfriend, and they were doing well, good kids, and they were jogging. And then say two white guys decide to rob him and shoot him dead execution style. Well, there'd be massive riots. The president would come out and speak. They would say that white people need to do better. They would be all white people are accountable for this. But when it's the other way around, no. And by the way, 9 out of 10 times is black on white is not white on black. That's the stats. I think it's even worse than that, but that's the way it is. And no one talks about it, and everyone just I think people are really getting tired of this. And I'm really tired of this thing that comes around. Oh, we got to be a Christian and just forget. The boy made a bad choice. The black boy that killed the guy, he's not a boy, he's 17 years old, did that. Oh, he just made a bad choice. All right. Could you imagine after Dylan Roof that was attitude? Oh, we Christians, we have to understand. Right now, the black guy that stabbed to death, the white kid, has the GoFundMe of over $50,000. Number one, could you imagine putting a GoFundMe up for Dylan Roof and Christians saying, well, we got to love Dylan Roof and his family, and they're really victims in this too. And Dylan Roof's a good kid. He just made a bad choice. Let's raise money to help his defense. And maybe Dylan Roof, maybe those blacks said something mean about him racially, so maybe that justifies it. That's what we're hearing, the opposite. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. So all you Christians that say, oh, we just got to forgive, and no, he's just a good kid that made a mistake. All right, do you think that about Dylan Roof? Do you think how about a Hamas? How about all you Christian Zionists? Maybe we should just, for Hamas, they just made some poor choices. Happens. You should forgive. No, you don't. Kill them, right? And this is one of those things that I can't stand about a lot of those people is the same people that will flip out because their stock portfolio goes down 2%, their 401ks in a couple days. Well, they'll just freak out. They'll be seeing red in their face, screaming about the 2% decline. But then one of our kids gets killed. Another guy just probably made a mistake. No big deal. It's just bizarre. It is bizarre. So it's and the media is responsible. There's so many examples of this. I'll show you one here too. The double standard. It's a blood libel. It's done deliberately, an attack on our people. Here's CNN. A trial of a white homeowner in shooting of a black teen who rang the doorbell can proceed. So what happened? A white guy was at home, some black, supposedly teen went to the wrong house, was trying to break in or something, and the guy shot him. I'm not defending it, but look at here. Police say 17-year-old who fatally stabbed by another student at a track meet. They don't mention the races here, but here they do, right? Now, I guarantee you, if the races had been reversed and a white kid stabbed to death a black kid, that would make the race would make CNN would report on the race 100%. Not only that, there would probably be riots and all the civil rights groups would be out. They'd be blaming all white people, and white people are all implicit with racism, and we got to do better. They would blame Trump. They say this is an example of getting rid of DEI has created this atmosphere where white kids think they can just stab to death black kids, and social media will need to censor people now more because of this. That's what you would hear, right? But when it's the other way around, it's like, well, that these things happen, no big deal. And I'm really getting tired of it. I am really, really getting tired of this. And I would definitely like to see that change. And I think a lot of people are getting tired of this. Matt Walsh has some spicy posts on X, and other people did too. Again, I'm like the moderate now anymore compared to some of this, but I understand it. It's just been a war in our people, bloody war, and no one will stand up for our people. Everyone makes excuses, but oh, God forbid you have go the other way, the rare instance that goes the other way, then we're all collectively guilty. We all got to cry tears. It's just crazy. And I'm really getting tired of defending these really savages that are just murder people for moving their backpack or something like that. It's just crazy. But this is where we live, and I think people are really getting tired of it. I really do. I'm getting tired of it. I really am. I don't want to deal with that element. Don't want to be around them. I'm tired of it. And it has nothing to do with skin color. I've never seen anyone ever, maybe you guys have, I've never seen anyone said, oh, I don't want to go in that neighborhood because the people there are really nice and they're really kind. They're really pleasant. Their lawns are nice. Everyone's helpful, but they have the wrong skin color. And I just, for some reason, hate a skin color. No one does that. People hate the behavior, and that's associated. That's the problem. It's so stupid. It's just a skin color. No, it isn't. It's the behavior. No one cares about that, right? That'd be weird to care about skin color. Who cares about that? You care about their actions. And, you observe patterns. That's what AI does. And we can observe patterns, right? Because usually if you move like the backpack of an Asian kid, he's not going to stab you to death. If you move a backpack of a white kid, usually he's not going to stab you to death. Very rare. But you do it this way, well, just a poor choice. Again, in a just society, the murderer would already be hanging. He'd be swinging right now in a just society. And we don't have a just society now, though. And so we have this. It's just horrendous. Okay. The other big news today, and let's take a look at this. He got arrested today, I guess. This is Russell Brand.
Hello. Firstly, thank you for these incredible and overwhelming messages of support. We're very fortunate in a way to live in a time where there's so little trust in the British government. We're very fortunate, I suppose, that this is happening at a time where we know that the law has become a kind of weapon to be used against.
Well, we know that because the British government now officially, this isn't a conspiracy theory. They charge white men now you get a higher sentence if you're a white man in Britain for the same crime than any other group. That's official.
People, institutions, and sometimes entire nations that will not accept and tolerate levels of corruption that are unprecedented. I'm speaking particularly to those of you that are watching this in the UK. How do you feel about your legal system right now? How do you feel about some of the high-profile cases that are not being pursued and prosecuted? How do you feel that the Southport murders were handled? How do you feel about the government of Keir Starmer?
Yeah, you have to understand Starmer and the government, and this goes back to globalization, and certain groups have brainwashed them, or they're being paid off. They're saying, white people are the problem. We got to do everything to terrorize white people. So if white people are victims of crimes and the people are non-white that stab them to death, try to do as little penalties as possible to the people that commit crimes against whites. But if a white fights back, you got to hit them hard. That is the policy right now of most of the West. That is their philosophy.
Now, that's just sort of general context. Me, I've always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, we're just out of shot over there, my beautiful children, I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, a sex addict, and an imbecile. But what I never was a rapist. I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes. I want to thank all of you for your continuing support. I want to let you know that our show will be on Rumble on Monday. Thanks for your support there. And of course, I'm now going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. In the meantime, you lot, stay free, and we will be continuing to discuss this matter.
So a little bit more about
Praise
this.
the Lord.
He admits that he had a bad past. You know, he did things he regrets. I think all of us do, right? Maybe you guys haven't. I have. I haven't lived perfect. I have done things I've regretted. I think we all have. But this is from 20 years ago. And I'm sure 20 years ago, he screwed around with a lot of different women, did a lot of drugs, but there was no charges against him. No one made any accusations. And at least in the United States, that would be past the statute of limitations. The statute of limitations mean after so many years pass, you can't go after a crime. And there's a reason for that, except for murder, but most crimes you don't, because the recollection gets hazy, your memories. Memory's a strange thing. It's hard to remember 20 years ago exactly what happened. But so all these years, so he was a successful, famous comedian and actor, and he was on the left. The left loved him. He just made fun of the right. No problem. None of these charges ever came up. But the minute he started to get red pilled, and I guess COVID kind of red pilled him, that whole nonsense, and then he got religious and found God or whatever, then they go after him. That is not by coincidence. That's what they're doing. And again, I'm not justifying his prior life and all that, but a lot of these famous people, I mean, let's face it, if you're a rock star, famous comedian, yeah, you probably did a lot of drugs. You had a lot of groupies you had sex with, right? And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but that happens. And men like that, I mean, they should be careful, and you shouldn't do that. Hell, even Elon Musk has got in trouble, not with rape accusations, but child support and everything else. These guys need to be a little bit more careful on that. All right. Let's see here. I'm going to go over. I like Friday night. It's just it's a chill vibe, and been getting a lot of good interaction from you guys tonight. So we'll go a little longer. Then I'm ready for the weekend. All right. I'm a big fan of Trump, but some things I'm not a fan of. And I guess it's good because you guys support me. I don't have to. I don't have like a funder that tells me what to say. So when Trump does something I'm not a big fan of, I can just be honest. And maybe you disagree. That's okay. I'm okay with people disagreeing. I'm not saying I'm infallible. Sometimes I change my mind. But this whole war on the Houthis has been a big boondoggle. So far in this bombing against the Houthis, which are these primitive people in Yemen. Okay, just as a background, the Houthis are Muslims that do their Allah Akbar shit. I don't know, whatever. That's how they rock. You know how that is. I don't want to be there. I want to be around them. I don't want them in our countries, but they can do Allah Akbar in their countries, behead each other, whatever, stone each other, whatever they get off on, just keep it away from us. Well, the problem is these Houthis, they got these drones from Iran, and they were attacking some shipping that goes through the Red Sea. And the reason they were attacking the shipping is because the United States, we fund Israel in their, I don't know what other word than genocide to use, ethnic cleansing against the Palestinians. The Israelis give them this. They don't give a shit about the Geneva Convention. They don't give a shit about civilians. They just wipe out everyone. So, kind of hardcore. They don't make any apology about it because, the Holocaust. So, that's how they run. But anyway, the Houthis are upset about that. So they're saying, hey, U.S., you fund the Israelis. So any of Israeli ships or U.S.-backed ships, we're going to attack with drones. This is making it difficult for us to get shipping through the Red Sea because they can't get insurance. So we send our warships there. And yeah, we can shoot down drones. but our missiles are like $3 million a pop, and their drone is like $20,000. Not a good trade-off. So we decided we're going to, send drones, and the Houthis have been shooting down some of our drones. They just shot down an MQ-9 drone the other day. But we send these drones and missiles to shoot some of these guys in sandals or whatever, right? I mean, there's millions of them, a lot of them anyway. And they're not just in one location, they're all over. So it doesn't really do any good. So we're pissing away all this money. And as I did the analogy, it'd be like if you have some cockroaches in your house and you decide, well, the way to deal with this, I'm going to get my rifle out and just start shooting at them. Okay, maybe you can hit a cockroach that way, but you're probably doing more damage to your house that is worth shooting a cockroach with a bullet in your rifle with a rifle. There's other ways to deal with it, right? Like I would get rid of the cockroaches by making a clean environment, poison them, but then make a clean environment so they don't get in there. That's how you do it. And we should do that with the Houthis. If we don't get involved with the Middle East and funding Israel and all their wacky, let's kill all the Palestinian schemes, then we want to have all these issues. We could be neutral and like, yeah, we're not going to get involved with your weird shit. You guys fight it out. We don't care. Same with you, Russia and Ukraine. Yeah, that's up to you. Israel, you want to do your little genocides. Okay, we're not going to pay for it, though. And then we'd be out of this mess. Oh, no, we have to be involved with the mess because certain people, hi, Tom Cotton, they're paid off by that country, Israel, right? So there we go. This is where we're in. So now we have this mess and we don't know how to deal with it. Like, well, the United States, we're like the guy with a rifle. We don't have any other tool. So everything we see, we shoot the rifle at. So we got these bombs, so we'll drop bombs, I guess. It doesn't do any good. They're not going to go anywhere. They get these cheap drones, and they're all running around. They're all screaming about Allah. Who cares? They live a short life anyway. So it's not an effective strategy. So now we're mad at Iran, but Iran's pretty powerful. They're not like the Iraqis. They're actually more sophisticated. So that creates a lot of issues. And even Iraq, if we bomb, not Iraq, I get them all mixed up. Iraq's were the Sunnis. Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction. Oops, we lied about that. Well, anyway, now we're after Iran, the Shiites. I guess they're Shiites, right? But we're mad at them. So let's bomb them. Bomb Iran. Remember that? If you're older, you remember that. All right, so we bomb them. What does that do? Nothing, really, because they have all these underground tunnels and everything. So, yeah, we get some spectacular footage of buildings going up. Oh, yeah, we kicked ass. But it's not going to change anything unless we invade. But who's going to invade? We don't have the army for that. So it's not really well thought out. And we're pissing away money. We don't have money to piss away on this bullshit. So we need to get away from that. And I would like to see Trump kind of ease up on some of that a little bit. So that's the kind of what's happening with the Houthis and the Houthis and the Iranians. Let's see what else we got here. And yeah, it's the blood libel against our people, not just in America, has just been crazy. In Canada, they had their hoax about all these Christian organizations. I think most of them are Catholic, but they had these great people that they felt bad because the Indians wouldn't take care. A lot of them were drunk. They wouldn't take care of their Eskimos, wouldn't take care of the kids. So these Christians, they poured their own money in to take these kids in, educate them, and give them food and everything, right? And how did they get paid back? Oh, you just murder them and bury them on the school grounds. This hoax started, and Canada spent $216 million. And Canada's not a rich nation anymore, despite importing all these Muslims and Indians. It hasn't made them rich. They just got poorer. But they spent all this money to locate the graves of these Indian kids at churches. And so got everyone mad about Christians and whites, and a lot of 100 churches was set on fire and everything, terrorism. Yeah, no bodies were found. It kind of reminded me in Hungary. There's a story. I don't know what it is with this group and shoes, but in Hungary, they have this exhibit over the Danube River of all these shoes of all these victims of a certain group that the evil Germans threw them in the river. And then it was like, okay, well, I mean, we should get the bodies out of the river, right? Let's dig up the river and, so we can bury the bodies. They couldn't find any bodies. And then it was like, no, don't desecrate. You're desecrating the souls. You can't search for them. You got to trust us. They're there, even though you can't find them. It's all fake. It's all fake. But that's what we have there. So that got everyone all upset, but it was all nonsense. And it was pretty crazy on that. Let's see here. What else do we have? All right, let's see here. This has music. I shouldn't do this. So I think that's. Let me just see if I got everything. It's been a fun show tonight. I want to thank you all guys for being here. And I had a clip, but I think there may be music. And here's Robert. Thank you, Robert. I really appreciate this. In Ram's view, Trump is using these tariffs to bargain, but not permanently. I just don't see them bringing back manufacturing in big numbers. And none of us want a global trade war. These need to be short term. Okay, let's see here. I don't think it's just a bargain. No, I think he wants to bring manufacturing back here. And so I don't think he's bluffing. No, and for reasons I said at the start of the show, I don't think this is sustainable anymore. We can't outsource everything in our country anymore. And we could for a while when it was just us as the United States as the top dog. But now with China and even Russia and the BRICS economies, it's just not going to be possible anymore. This model will not work that we've been running under of huge deficits. It just can't work. And so, no, I don't think this is ever going to go back anymore. We've had a fundamental change in how I think this is as fundamental as what happened under Nixon, going off the gold standard, or Bretton Woods after World War II. It's fundamentally a change going on now. There's no going back. No going back. There's no way you can go back. Even if they got rid of the tariffs, that would boom the stock market temporarily. But eventually our deficits and our lack of making everything in this country, we would not be able to pay the interest on our debt. And then we would have a bond crisis and everything would implode. So, I mean, that's just math. That's not politics. That's just math. So I don't think Trump is faking it. And I don't think there's much of a choice, to be honest. We better bring back manufacturing. There's no reason we can't. No, if it went there, it can come back, right? This is like it's immigration. If people immigrate into our country, well, they can immigrate out. They can re-immigrate, or they can go back out, right? So if they come in, they can get the hell out. It just doesn't go one way. Same with jobs. Jobs go out, they can come back in. There's no reason that can't happen. And there's going to be a realignment of many things. And and it's not what I want, or I think it's necessary. It's not a matter of what anyone wants. This is what's going to happen. There's no other way around it. It's a math problem we're running into now because of our deficits and everything else. We got to manufacture here. We got to bring back jobs here. And we can't have a situation where only the top 10% really prosper in this country. That's not going to work. It's already creating problems in the society, including birth rates and everything else. It's just not sustainable. So we're in a fundamental change. Yeah, as I said, this week has been this is a bigger issue than Ukraine. It's kind of tied to the border because the border is very similar. This is a movement of people. This is a movement of capital, but it's very similar. They're kind of tied. This is a dramatic moment. We're living through history here because I think the EU's on borrowed time now. They're going to start breaking up. I think the whole globalist idea of one world government's breaking apart. it's all changing, man. It's all changing. The dollar's not going to be the reserve currency within 5 years. We're going to see it move away from the dollar. We're big time movement. So I'm predicting this is a big to do. And if it's going to happen one way or the other, if we didn't do tariffs, okay, we could just have the government implode because we can't pay the interest on the debt. But everything is changing, and it's just the way. I mean, people knew this one day would happen, but they kept kicking the can down the road. We ain't kicking this can down the road any longer. The can is too big and too heavy. We'll just break our foot if we try. So we're in a new world, but when there's a lot of new changes, there's a lot of good opportunities, right? There's a lot of good opportunities. It's not all bad, but there's going to be an adjustment. So we will see what happens, and we'll be here. Hopefully we'll be here. So guys, thank you so much for being here. I love my Friday night shows. It's great to have you guys here. And I will be back on Monday for sure. Maybe Sunday night session, I will do Night Owls. That's kind of our optional show. That's a show that I don't really prep for. I also, I want to make sure Sasha's up for it. I think she's feeling better now. She kind of hurt her arm this week. She had to get a couple stitches because she had a fall. Had to take her to urgent care. But she's okay. She's just not working now because of her arm, but it's healing well. So thank you guys. I love you all, and I will see you Monday, if not sooner. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.